Hello and welcome to this joint ProCon Nottinghamshire and ProCon Leicestershire webinar. I'm William Kersham and I am the chair of ProCon Nottinghamshire. ProCon has been connecting professionals in property and construction since 2018 in Nottinghamshire and since 2000 in Leicestershire. We now boast a combined membership of more than 1,000 people. We hope that many of our members have joined us today to listen to this webinar. However, we're always looking for more people to join the network. And so if you're not a member and are interested in finding out more, please drop us an email at info@procon-nottinghamshire.co.uk for Nottinghamshire or info@procon-leicestershire.co.uk for Leicestershire, or call us on 07803 126 807. Today, we're going to give you an exclusive first look at a brand new building project that's recently reached completion in Nottinghamshire. ROMO Fabrics is a market leader in designing fabrics and wall coverings. In 2017, it started the search for an architect to design a new global HQ with the plan for merging its 4 existing sites, and is currently home to more than 350 employees. Maber Architects was appointed to design a quality, contemporary building that reflected the group's values and ethos with a wow factor for both visitors and team members alike. Today, you'll have an exclusive look at the building and find out more about the project from Maber. We'll also be hosting a live Q&A session at the end of the webinar with assistance from Danielle at Cartwright Communications. We'll also be joined by a fantastic panel with representatives from Maber, CPW, PML Construction Management, and BSP Consulting. If you have a question, simply type it into the box below and we'll answer those in a little while. You can also use the upvote function if you see a particular question you'd like to know the answer to, so please make use of this, as we'll be able to make sure we answer the questions that you're most interested in. So without further ado, let's hear more about the project from Maber's CEO, Mark Hobson.
Thank you for taking the time to join this webinar. My name is Mark Hobson, CEO of Maber Architects. Over the next 15 minutes or so, I will talk you through one of those rare project opportunities that come along once in a while that most architects would give their right arm to work on. Projects like this present complex challenges that test the skill and resolve of designers and engineers to create a piece of architecture that is bespoke and meets their clients' exact requirements. The ROMO Fabrics new global headquarters is one of those special projects, and this presentation tells the story of the design development of the scheme. The ROMO Group is a British family-run business in its 5th generation. The company is renowned for its diverse range of fabrics, wall coverings and accessories, and is recognised as an international market leader in high-end interior textiles. The company was founded in 1902 by Robert Mould, who started a small-scale furniture manufacturing business in Nottingham. By the 1930s, the company had become a wholesaler to the upholstery industry, supplying fabrics and components for the manufacture of furniture. In the 1980s, ROMO started their own in-house design studio, and since then they have built on the success to become one of the most renowned design-led companies in their industry. Today, the group has over 350 employees, and global exports account for approximately 70% of their sales. Today, the group is managed by the founder's great-grandson, Jonathan Mould, along with his niece, Lindsay, and children Felicity, Emily, and Jordan. Maber Architects were approached in early 2016 by client agent John Kay with an invitation to pitch for a new bespoke headquarters building that would amalgamate 4 of the ROMO Group's existing operational sites. In early April 2016, the core design team was selected for the project and was announced as Maber Architects lead consultant for architecture, interiors and landscape design, CPW of Nottingham mechanical and electrical services consultants, BSP Consulting as structural and civil engineers, and Planning Manager Limited as construction managers. Working alongside the core consultant team were a host of sub-consultants and subcontractors covering various specialist aspects of the development. Between the 5 design-led, opinionated family members involved in the decision-making process, the client held very diverse views on what constitutes good architecture. However, their core brief and aspiration was essentially to create a discreetly beautiful architectural statement building that would epitomise the values of the ROMO brand. In 2016, ROMO were reliant on 4 existing individual buildings in Kirkby and Ashfield near Mansfield. The buildings were acquired or built individually on a piecemeal basis and were no longer fit for purpose to service the needs of a successful, expanding business with global demand for its products. ROMO's existing operation relies on guaranteed stock levels, fast processing of orders, and speed of transportation partners. Their delivery service is renowned as one of the most efficient in the industry. The group's existing warehouses hold 250,000 rolls of fabric and wall coverings, which is the equivalent of 2.4 million square metres. The customer service team takes approximately 3,300 inquiries on a daily basis, and all orders taken by 2 p.m. are dispatched on the same day worldwide. They also offer an excellent sample service, sending out over 5,000 fabric and wallpaper samples each day. The family-led client team have a very clear vision for the business. In summary, they want to maintain a strong market position and continue to grow the business through innovative design and investment in new technologies and state-of-the-art facilities. On this basis, the brief given to Maber Architects was to provide a high-quality contemporary building that would reflect the ROMO Group values for distinctive design, but at the same time reflect their honest and caring ethos. The completed scheme also had to have a wow factor that would impress company heads and visitors from around the world. The main functional requirements set in the brief were that the new headquarters must have a standout reception area, a flexible town centre space for large gatherings and circulation, presentation and showroom spaces, 4 individual inspirational design studios, 1 for each of the ROMO core brands, specialised storage warehouse with automated picking equipment, and attractive landscape external areas with seating and walking routes. Initially, the building needed to accommodate 285 existing staff, with an allowance for 25% expansion to 350 staff in the longer term. ROMO were keen that their new headquarters was located in close proximity to their existing offices at Lowmoor Road in Kirkby and Ashfield, so that any move would cause minimal impact on their existing labour force, who in the main live in the locality. In 2015, ROMO were fortunate to find a suitable 5-hectare site, approximately 1 mile from their existing HQ, and in close proximity to the Sutton Parkway railway station. The site itself is approximately 5.2 hectares. It's 260 metres long by 200 metres wide, with a variable 5-metre fall from west to east. Long before any conceptual ideas were discussed with the client, Maber undertook a thorough physical review of the existing buildings occupied by ROMO. A family tree diagram provided Maber with a starting point in terms of understanding the makeup of the ROMO Group and department personnel. The 5 family members hold key roles at the head of the group structure, and Maber conducted detailed interviews with each of them, together with all department managers, in order to gain a detailed understanding of each facet of the business and their physical space requirements. Between March and June 2016, Maber undertook a review of the various processes and usage of space across the 4 existing sites. This analysis gave the design team a detailed understanding of the various operational interrelationships and helped to formulate an early space budget for the new building. Diagrammatic route maps of 3 of the main production lines were prepared, which included main order processing from goods in to goods dispatch, sample and swatch order processing, and pattern book processing from delivery of stock through to order collection. Team mapping allowed Maber to create a diagram of the various department sizes across the business to better understand their interrelationships. On this diagram, directors are illustrated in green alongside the key departments that they work with on a daily basis. This led to adjacency mapping, which defined the working relationships between teams and individuals, and also zone mapping, which collated teams into logical relationship groupings. This analysis allowed Maber to create an organisational process map, which informed the initial functional layout for the new building. With this information in hand, the design development phase commenced in July 2016, during which time the design team started to develop early conceptual strategies in terms of layout, form and appearance. It was obvious from the start that the family wanted to be involved in every design decision taken on the project, and each of them had a different opinion on what constituted good and bad design. Each director had a genuine interest in architecture, and all had their own Pinterest sites with favourite buildings, all of which were very different. Our initial role as architects and workplace specialists was to try and capture their ideas and aspirations, with a view to formulating a consensus on the layout principles and general look and feel for the new building. From the background work undertaken as part of the physical estate review, a spatial adjacency diagram emerged relatively early in the conceptual planning stage. This diagram started to inform the relationship between design studios, offices, social spaces, reception areas, and the main warehouse, storage and dispatch areas. The diagrams were tested with various sketch layouts, and these developed into footprint arrangements that were tested on the site together with early landscape concepts. Numerous massing studies were undertaken in parallel to test the scale of individual spaces and how they might connect together to form the new building. A preferred option started to emerge, with office and design studio spaces linked to the functional warehouse and storage picking space by an atrium hub. This town hall space, as it became known, was also connected to the main entrance, cafe and social areas. Inspiration came from both historic layouts and contemporary buildings, which were discussed and debated at length with the client team. A site concept evolved which took reference from defensive, medieval, inward-looking fortified towns. The building arrangement was planned to focus around a central atrium space using courtyards, cloister spaces and enclosed wall gardens as precedents. The client team were keen that facades and the external aesthetic was simple, bold, dramatic, but at the same time restrained in terms of colour. Early 3D modelling sought to capture these elements and test how they would work in terms of individual functional elements of the building. By the end of 2016, the building layout was starting to gel, and the design team spent many hours with the ROMO client team developing the detailed layout for each of the 3 key zones of the building. During this time, BSP engineers developed the structural frame concept based on client requirements for a high-quality concrete frame for offices, studio and atrium area, combined with a steel frame for the warehouse and high bay storage areas. CPW also started to formulate the M&E approach, which involved a bespoke solution to suit the various building functions. For the office and studio areas, they specified a passive cooling system, taking advantage of the exposed thermal mass of the concrete slabs, combined with solar control facade engineering and good levels of natural ventilation. For the warehouse, the solution involved a combined mechanical and natural ventilation system in order to offset heat gain in summer months, together with a high-velocity ducted heating system to create appropriate working conditions in the winter. Establishing the external aesthetic for the building was a challenging process. Maber produced upwards of 40 elevational options, testing numerous combinations of stone, brickwork, curtain walling and composite cladding. And at each stage, the detailed 3D model of the building proved absolutely invaluable and allowed Maber to explore infinite aesthetic permutations in order to try and achieve client sign-off. The final solution included a simple palette of high-value materials selected for their individual aesthetic qualities and durability. The offices are clad with curtain walling, made up from a random pattern of large double-glazed units and coloured panels, which appear to change colour in differing light conditions. Like the offices, the warehouse cladding has a vertical emphasis, but is a natural matte grey composite metal panel system. There is a unifying plinth constructed from handmade non-standard bricks that give weight to the base of the building. Internally, the use of high-quality timber panels are used to contrast with the exposed concrete finishes in the atrium, office and studio areas. A detailed virtual building model allowed the client team to explore their building as a 3D prototype, and the walkthrough movie helped achieve a client sign-off for the detailed design stage by February 2017. Planning Manager Limited were appointed in the spring of 2017 to procure and construct the project through construction management rather than a traditional or design and build contract route. This involved splitting the project into 64 individual works packages and gave the opportunity for the client to influence the selection of virtually every component of the building in sequence with the construction programme. A room was set up at the ROMO HQ at Lowmoor Road, where every external and internal material sample proposed by the design team was debated and justified in terms of their suitability and design integrity. 120 individual architectural design presentations were made over a 3-year period from inception through to completion. There were many other workshops dedicated to mechanical, electrical and structural specification items. Under normal circumstances, a project of this nature would take approximately 6 months from initial brief to submission of a planning application. Due to the client's desire to explore numerous functional and aesthetic options before committing to a final solution, the initial design development period took around 12 months. A planning application was prepared and submitted to Ashfield District Council for approval in early March. Construction enabling works commenced in June 2017, and the building contract will be substantially complete in early August 2020, with full occupation by September. Every building project goes through an incredibly complex journey from design inception through to construction completion. The ROMO Group HQ has taken 4.5 years from start to finish. The project has been special for all of those involved, and the finished building will leave a true legacy for the family and the business going forward.
Hello and welcome to Kirkby and Ashfield in Nottinghamshire and the new headquarters of the ROMO Group. You join me here for a quick tour of the building where I'll tell you all of the things that are important to us and the client on a lovely day to show you the building. So you can see here the main entrance. The entrance experience was always really important to us. The siting of the building within the site, the landscape between the building and the boundaries. And as I said, this entrance experience, arriving by vehicle all the way up to the main entrance, was really, really key. Let's go and take a look inside. Okay, you join me here at the main entrance. You've been swept away from the building. You've had a few looks over your shoulder at the building as it's been revealing yourself through the trees and the landscape. But as you turn this corner, you're presented with the main entrance of the building. Natural wayfinding signpost at the entrance. You've got a large open plaza in front of it, the entrance canopy, staff parking off to the left, and visitor parking off to the right. Let's go and take a closer look at the entrance. So we're now standing right in the centre of this large entrance plaza that we've seen from the top of the road. It's generous and open, it's not cluttered, it's designed to signpost the entrance naturally. So immediately when you arrive at the end of the road, you know where the main entrance to the building is. It's framed on either side with the beautiful landscaping, the silver birch trees and the varied planting either side. And there's a couple of seats outside for days like this where you might want to just take the load off and just pause before you enter the building. So now you join me to have a little bit of a closer look at some of these beautiful materials. We've got beautiful handmade bricks here by Peterson. We've got a lovely cast in situ concrete canopy. And then above me, a lovely, beautiful stucco facade in anodised aluminium, which is dazzling in the sun today. So this is the main entrance. The entrance is set up to have a reflection pool either side of it. Centrally, you've got this constriction of space taking you right into the heart of reception, and it's framed by this huge concrete canopy with an almost unbelievable span. But there's some steelwork hidden in the depth of that concrete to make that possible. Mention the reflection pools. Let's go and have a closer look at them. So we're here just having a look at these beautiful reflection pools either side of the main entrance. This lovely concrete reflecting in the pool, the light bouncing off the pool, the noise of the water, this concrete running all the way inside. These are a really nice trick either side of the entrance to just bring all of these materials and spaces to life. So we've looked at the building from the outside for long enough. Let's go and have a look inside. As I mentioned, there's this restriction of space going through the entrance in this draft lobby. Automatic doors let you into the lobby. And then the secure line is this second set of doors. And as we pass through the reception entrance, this constriction of space is holding back the experience of the atrium. That's further held back as you arrive into the main reception area and what will be a fantastic show space or showroom for all of the latest collections of the fabric and products. So we're in reception. We've got traditional reception desk, waiting area. There's a visitor suite behind us with meeting rooms, visitor toilets and a small kitchenette. As we said, this is the show space. It's got a real art gallery feel. Let's go and have a look at the atrium and go up this showcase staircase. So let's leave the show space, go up to the first floor through this staircase and have a look at the atrium, which is teased through this view. Again, it's another constriction of space, which exaggerates the openness when you get to the other end. Got these monolithic structural concrete walls. All the structural frame on this side of the building is exposed. And there's lots of early coordination between us and BSP, the engineers, to coordinate all the lines and details that you can see in this concrete. For example, this recess above me here and to my left, that looks relatively random in the middle of a staircase, but runs all around the building at each level and is a datum which lines through with the top of skirting board. So traditional timber skirting boards are lined through with a recess in structural concrete. When we get to the top of the stairs, you now get the big reveal, what you've all been waiting for, the view of the atrium. So standing in the middle of the atrium, you can really get an appreciation for how this building is set up. In the distance, you can see the showcase and the reception where we enter the building. They lead you into the atrium. On the left-hand side, we've got offices and design studios. And on the right-hand side, we've got the warehouse spaces. And behind you and below you, we've got a cafe and refectory area, which we'll see later. So we've already explained how the building is set up. Central atrium, workplace and offices off to my left. On the top floor, there's the design studios, and that's what we're going to take a look at now. Pass through the entrance to the studios, signposted by the timberer, as I'll talk about a little bit later on. But let's have a look inside one of the studios in a bit more detail. So once you're inside the studios, the first thing you notice is the completely different feeling due to the natural light. The huge amount of natural daylight, indirect light, from the large north lights and much less from the facade. That's intentional. The natural indirect light is what's really needed in a design studio, and this is an absolutely beautiful place to work. So this space here is an example of one of the wet creative areas incorporated into each studio. You can see some painting going on. The brief for these spaces were spaces where you're allowed to be really messy, and I just wonder how long it'll take them after moving into such a brand new building to become truly messy and creative. So here in one of the other studios, I've mentioned how different they feel because of the daylight, but there's lots of things that are similar to the floors below. Again, we've got the expressed concrete frame. We've got the linear light fittings, and we've got the same detailing on this spine accommodation of the shadow gaps and the timber. In the distance, you can see a trick. The wall almost goes up to the soffit, but doesn't quite. It hides a lot of mess and a lot of storage, drying racks for paintings, storage of fabric rolls, storage of art media and things like that, but it's a real trick. So now we pass through into the third and final studio. Not spoken about it yet, but ROMO are designers at heart. All of the creativity is what's behind the fantastic furnishings and fabric that they produce, and that's why the brief for these studios was so extravagant. It really is the heart of the business and the creativity, and what a fantastic inspirational place to work. The central atrium staircase was a real joy to design. It cantilevers off this huge concrete sheer wall, hangs in space, and has got this beautiful raw steel balustrade. Really, really enjoyable to use, and everybody in the business uses these staircases to circulate. And what an effect it creates in this atrium. So here we are on the ground floor offices. Slightly different facade treatment here because you're not within the curtain walling. You've got floor to ceiling glass, so you've got beautiful views of the landscape out there and that horizon that's been created by the land rising up a little bit away from the building. Same light fittings as we've got on the other floors, the same downstand beams, the same structural concrete soffits with fully coordinated services at each junction of the shuttering. Running on the other side of the offices here, you've got a central accommodation, spine accommodation of all the cellular spaces and practical uses, meeting rooms, printing rooms, a toilet block that we've just passed by. All of that being hidden away allows for a service run above it of all the mechanical and electrical service runs and equipment. It's all hidden away, giving these lovely free open soffits. As a counterpoint to the atrium and the extravagance of those spaces, we wanted these north and south staircases to feel relatively stark. You can tell from the audio in here how much of a different space it is. We've still got the mild steel balustrades, but you've got exposed concrete walls, very minimal lighting, which gives a very different feel to anywhere else in the building, which I think is really successful. So we've seen the lovely anodised aluminium Schuko curtain walling of the offices, but I just wanted to show you this screen above the main entrance, which is a little bit special. It's a structural steel curtain walling system by Novum Structures, and as such it requires no secondary support whatsoever, so it stands completely independently, spanning over 14 metres wide and 18 metres tall. Coming out of the offices, you can see something that was really key to the brief right from day one, and how connected all of the different uses and areas of the building are. The business previously operated across 4 different spaces. They're all brought together in this new facility, and you can see directly into the warehouses from the office and directly back from the warehouse back into the office. So a huge amenity to the building is this cafe area at the end of the atrium, which you can see in the distance. It's a huge step on from where they were in the previous facility, with full catering facilities, full servery, catering kitchen behind the wall, and this lovely view out to this courtyard that you can see behind me here. It was really important to both the client and us at Maber to bed the building into a beautiful landscape. The client wanted an amenity to be able to get out during the summer months and winter months, walk around the landscape and have a bit of exercise while still within the site. You can see here the variety that we've got. We've got wildflower meadow planting over here, a less formal lawn in the middle here to walk around, and then over here to my left you can see a much more formal lawn on an elevated level, all punctuated with little places where you can just stop, have a break, make a phone call, coffee, or eat your lunch. One device that I think was really successful in the scheme is the slip plane between the heavy masonry base and the handmade bricks and the refined anodised aluminium facade. You can see the huge cantilever at the front of the building, which amounts to about 5.5 metres, and that's slipped over the bottom plane of the masonry. If you turn to look at the other end of the building, you can see the nod to that, with the top floors of the offices pulled back and those hand-made masonry bricks extending into an archway into the landscape, creating that slip plane between the top and the bottom. That trick creates a fantastic feeling and a tension of space at the main entrance with that huge overhang. Structurally, I mentioned it's 5.5 metres, but it's 4.5 metres externally, so it creates a fantastic feeling under that huge cantilever at the front of the building adjacent to the main entrance. So we've seen the offices and the atrium, and now we're going to have a look at the warehouse. And as we walk down, you can see this is not your average warehouse. The lovely large glazed screens here, which relate to workspace inside, and the slit windows above that go all the way to the parapet of the warehouse. It really is a high quality workspace. So we've seen inside the offices, we've seen inside the atrium, and we're now moving further down the building to look inside the warehouse. So you join me at the warehouse entrance, very much not a tradesman's entrance. It's a key part of the brief to have parity in all workplaces in the building, whether they be in the warehouse, the atrium or the design studios. So again, you have a lovely concrete canopy akin to the one at the main entrance. Again, you have this constriction of space through the entrance into the warehouse, which, as I've already said, is a lovely workplace. Let's go inside and see the quality of the space in there. And here we are in the warehouse. So standing on the mezzanine in the warehouse next to this fantastic light well, you can see the workplaces below and the light assembly that's going on. And natural light is as important here as it was in the high quality design studios and the office side. You can see the product, it has to be seen to true colour, it has to be QA'd here. The sample books that get sent out to allow people to choose their fabrics are manufactured here. So it seems an extravagance, but it's a really, really important part of the brief and creates this fantastic workplace. You can also see behind me, start to glimpse at the automation. You've got this high-level conveyor system here, lots of empty rolls at the bottom which will eventually contain fabric, and in the distance beyond that back wall is the black box of the magic automated warehouse. So we've seen the high-quality staircases in the office block. Similar attention to detail in the warehouses here. Even though this is a relatively back-of-house staircase, it forms part of the visitor route. So you've still got high-quality balustrade finishes, high-quality finish on the precast concrete stairs. And we continue all the way up the top of the stair through this door, taking us onto a gantry, which leads us into the automated warehouse. So from here we can see the heart of the facility and all of the automation. In the distance against this back wall, you can see the trays being deposited out. Individual rolls of fabric are then put on these conveyors, which delivers them to cutting tables. Sections of fabric are taken off, the master roll goes back, and the section goes on another conveyor, which gets taken to goods out and gets dispatched all around the world. So we're now going to pass through this wall into the black box and the real heart of this facility. There's over 20,000 trays within this black box, each containing up to 8 rolls of fabric. That's a lot of fabric. It's where it's all stored intelligently and delivered out here for cutting and dispatch. Let's go and have a look. Another huge driver of this project, aside from bringing together all of the disparate uses within the business, was efficiency. This warehouse and this whole room here is all about efficiency. All of this fabric being stored on all of these trays, collected by the automated cranes, brought back and delivered to the people that cut them. It's all about speed and efficiency. It was all judged on deliveries per hour, how many rolls could be delivered out and sent back for storage within an hour. And they've seen a huge increase in efficiency, which means they can get more fabric out of the factory per hour and per day. The design team was responsible for coordinating all of this automation into this element of the warehouse. All the sprinkler design, all the racking, all these automated cranes, all had to fit within a very, very strict envelope to maximise the amount of space that was used. thanks very much for joining me and having a look around this fantastic facility. I hope you've enjoyed looking at it. I've certainly enjoyed showing you it. And thank you to everyone at ProCon Nottingham and Cartwrights for organising this. And now I'll hand back over to the panel.
Massive thanks to everyone who featured in that video. What a fantastic project, and so amazing to go behind the scenes there with Leo. So I'm Danielle from Cartwright Communications. I'm going to be hosting the Q&A this afternoon with our fantastic panel. Now I'm going to let them introduce themselves because there's a lot of people involved in today's webinar who have been involved in this project. So you've just seen him taking you on a tour of the project itself. So I'll go to Leo first if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Leo Ward, work for Maber Architects. I was project architect on the project from inception in 2016 to a very recent completion in 2020.
Thank you ever so much, Leo. And next up we have Andy.
Hello, I'm Andy Purvis. I was involved in the front end design and concept for the project, working very closely with Leo for Maber Architects.
Brilliant. And next up we have got Ash.
Hello, I'm Ashley Cowdery from Couch Perry Wilkes. We were the M&E consultants on the scheme.
Short and sweet, I love it. And next up we've got Paul.
Hi, my name's Paul Levers. We were the construction managers on the scheme.
And we've also got Clive next up.
Hi, I'm Clive Roddick from BSP Consulting. I was director on the scheme.
And also we are in the company of Will Kersham, who is the chairman of ProCon Nottinghamshire, who will bring the webinar to a close very shortly. So let's get stuck into the Q&A, shall we? First up, let's ask you a question, Andy. You were involved in the project from a very, very early stage, pretty much from its inception. So how well was your initial concept realised in the finished article?
Well, I think it the finished building actually surpasses some of the concept stuff. You know, we used 3D modelling throughout and visualised internally and externally, and you know that really helped to inform the design. But the final result is absolutely fantastic. You know, it couldn't have been better, really.
Did you ever think it would? You know, I mean, it's hard, isn't it, when you're first doing a project? Do you ever expect it to fully turn out the way you expect it to?
It's difficult. I mean, it changes during the construction process. You know, there's always things that need to be amended and tweaked, and but I think the finished building, there are differences from the original sort of concept, but you know, everything that was done just enhanced the design. Really, it was all done to refine and enhance.
It absolutely looks fantastic. Seeing it on that video in all its glory, it does look brilliant.
Yeah, I think the quality of finish and the quality, you know, internally and externally is amazing. You know.
Definitely. Now, Paul, let's come to you with the next question. What is the gross size of the completed building, and what was the cost per square metre of the finished building as well?
So yeah, the building itself is 33,000 metres squared in total. So yeah, a big unit, and the average cost was just £1,700 a metre squared, and that included circa £15 million worth of automation from Italy, and that's all the furniture and the full fit out, so basically walking through the door.
Now, Leo, let's come back to you. Amazing tour, by the way, I really enjoyed that. Why are there two different structural framing systems in the building, and what were the main structural design challenges, would you say, of this project?
The reason for the two different approaches to the structural frame is to reflect the internal uses and the demands of the spaces. So on the one hand, you've got requirement for large, efficient, clear span storage spaces in the warehouse, which is the most efficient to achieve that in steelwork. And then on the other side, in the offices and atrium, you've got a requirement for a really, really high quality workspace and that much sort of higher quality, softer finish. The client wanted an honesty of materials as well throughout the building. So it was nice to express both of those frames and show that contrast.
Absolutely. Clive, would you like to add anything onto this?
Well, Leo's answered some of that, in as much as the steel work frame was there for economy, and the concrete has a lot of aesthetic appearance and was suitable for that. There were quite a lot of the challenges in the structural design came from the fact that we wanted uniformity in the structure. so that all the beams wanted to have the same profiles, for instance, and the same columns throughout. When you actually do a design on a project like this, the frame has a lot of different loads and a lot of different forces. So we ended up cramming a lot of reinforcement into the structure in various areas to actually get this to work. So it was actually quite challenging. The other area was the cantilever, but we can go on to that if anyone wants to at a later time.
Of course, yes. And of course, anyone who's watching, if you do want to ask any questions, I can see that we've already had one in already. Thank you so much. So do please feel free to type the questions into the Q&A box and we'll make sure that we answer those for you. Clive, we're staying with you for this next question. A lot is made of the uniformity of the structure. How did the engineer and the architect collaborate to achieve this?
Well, we needed there was a lot of meetings on that. As I say, the sizes of the various members were a collaboration between the two of us as to what was visually acceptable and what was structurally economic. There was the requirement was to make everything look slender, but to actually achieve the spans that we wanted to, we ended up having to have quite deep beams. But we managed to keep the width of the beams quite shallow, which gives it quite a slender look.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's most unusual about the steel frame in the warehouse. In a completely traditional, efficient high bay warehouse, you'd have a big variety of depths of beams and variety of columns, but we were really wedded to the client's desire for the aesthetics to be really, really high quality. So that was why a lot of the structural design was driven by aesthetics as well as efficiency. So it's always a balance between the two. We'll
stay on the aesthetic theme with this next one because this is coming to you, Ash. Let's talk about the exposed slabs in the office because they look really neat. So how do you avoid having the usual, spaghetti of services above the office?
Well, Leo mentioned that we designed a spine service run down the centre of the building, and that was quite important to the sort of concept of the scheme, really. That the perimeters had very high windows, and then we took a bulkhead in the centre of the building, and that bulkhead hides, as well as providing cellular office area, it hides an array of evils in terms of M&E. And then we use displacement vent to get the air into the deeper plan office areas. So all that air and all that ductwork is hidden within the floor void, which left very little really that we had to put in the ceiling void, on the slabs. We also put a lot of effort with Clive and with Leo into passive cooling. So the requirement for cooling in those offices is really reduced down to an absolute minimal. So yeah, all we're left with then is the lights, which look great, the sprinklers, which were painted into to be hidden, and the fire alarm system.
And we went through a painstaking process of what services there was left, coordinating them with the lines in the formwork of the concrete. So in the soffits, if you look in some detail, you can see the lines of the ply shuttering that was used, and we had service penetrations either on an intersection of those lines of shuttering or midpoints. So even the minimal services that were left don't affect the aesthetic as much as they often do.
I mean, I think I was going to say as well, Leo, you probably remember that when we introduced that central service spine, that was because originally the offices were just completely open to the atrium, and then we introduced the central service spine, which has cellular accommodation, which doesn't require a tall ceiling, escape stairs, kitchens, toilets, and that really unlocked the design, and that helped us to achieve the aesthetic that the client was really pushing us to do.
Absolutely. Now, Ash, coming back to you on this one, because what you were saying actually leads quite nicely into this about the cooling. So how did you balance the benefit of, great daylight against the potential heat loss and overheating risks?
Okay, so it's probably important to say that daylight was a key client driver, which was great because it meant that we could influence, and with Maber we could influence the window patterns within the conceptual design. And if you do that, then those three elements that you're talking about, daylight, heat loss and heat gain, they don't have to contradict each other. So if you get the orientation of your glazing right and the specification of your glazing right, you can provide great daylight without having to add huge amounts of solar gain. And the same on the heat loss. If you get your specification of glass right, you don't have to add loads of heat loss as long as your U value is good. And finally, I'd say don't forget that providing great daylight doesn't necessarily mean putting more glass in. It just means positioning the glass that you are putting in a correct and clever way. So, you know, we modelled the building to the nth degree to make sure that the daylight was provided without compromising any overheating or without compromising the heat loss.
Would any of you like to add anything onto that? I think it was quite comprehensive, that answer out there, Ash, but if anyone wants to add anything to that? No? Brilliant. There you go. You've done it in one go, Ash. Now, next one is for you, Andy, and this is a question that's come in from Jason Bearton. Thank you ever so much. I'm sorry if I said the question wrong there. 120 client presentations over a 12-month period sounds like an intensive exercise. Please could you share how you manage this process and track the decisions with the numerous stakeholders?
Well, the initial meetings were we had workplace specialists that were sort of meeting the family sort of probably twice a week, just to kind of try and finalise and tease out the brief. But then subsequent to that, we had pretty much weekly meetings with the family. So those meetings were generally with the 5 family members, the directors, and that was on a Monday morning. So every Monday morning we had a design presentation to the family, which could involve whatever the topic was for that particular day. So all of those meetings and all of those decisions were recorded, minuted, and those notes fed back into the system. So that was how we controlled it, really. But it was quite an intensive exercise. And again, you know, it wasn't just the weekly presentations. There were other members of the team that were having sort of engagement meetings with the warehouse team, other stakeholders in the business, and that was all fed back into the weekly presentations. So that was how we did it. But yes, it was very intensive.
Yeah, and in terms of how they were managed, all the meetings and the meetings, we prepared meeting schedules for the client that were linked into planning manager's construction program. So we would, once the original concept was fixed, we'd then draw those meetings into much more focused sessions that were tied into the work packages. It was obviously touched on in Mark's presentation that it was a construction management project, and that allowed the client to be able to still be developing the design once the construction period had started. So that's why there's an even lengthier and more intensive amount of meetings than you'd normally experience on a project of this scale.
And you just mentioned construction management there, Leo. So this leads quite nicely to you, Paul. What actually is construction management, and why was this procurement route chosen rather than design and build or a traditional contract, maybe?
Yeah, so we pitched to ROMO the construction management route as a truly collaborative way of delivering buildings. They're a successful business with an excellent leadership, and they know what they want, basically. The main thing for them was that they would be paying the trade contractors directly. So the man or lady erecting the curtain wall in the windows, they know the exact cost they're paying. There's no overheads or profit on anything that we do. And they were also in the meetings with the likes of CPW, BSP. We had the trade contractors in there. So it was an open discussion. When the client says, how much will that cost me? There's no one saying, don't tell them this. It's going to cost you that. And they just loved the idea, and it's been a great success for them.
And Clive, we're going to come to you next, because earlier in the presentation with Leo, he mentioned the cantilever, and you also mentioned it earlier on. So the 5-metre cantilever to the front of the office, did this present any engineering challenges for you?
Designing a 5-metre cantilever is actually quite a straightforward thing, except for the fact that they threw into the mix that the cladding could only deflect 4 millimetres. So a 5-metre cantilever that can only deflect 4 millimetres is something which is very difficult to design for, because the concrete itself will actually sag over time because it acts a bit like a plastic liquid rather than a solid. So we actually had to look at the aspects of creep in the concrete, which was actually outside the normal codes of practice. So a bit of a trip down to looking at fundamental principles and how materials work to actually get that to work. But we did it, and it's worked fine. is quite a challenge, but we got there.
Leo, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think one of the particular challenges that Clive's probably been a little bit modest about was that we were very honest with the structure, and all the structural frames in both the warehouse and the office are exposed, but there's a few areas where the structure was asked to do a little bit more than normal, but we didn't necessarily want to show that that extra work that the structure was doing. So in the 5-metre cantilever, for example, that we just spoke about at the front of the offices, from the outside of the building and the inside of the building, you can't really tell that there's structure doing any more work there. There's one column that's 50 mil bigger than all of the others, but all of the exposed edges of the floor slabs, for example, that you can actually see are all uniform on all the different floors, even though they're all working very differently. Another example is the canopy that you saw on the video. So it's got a huge span if it was just in concrete, but it's got some steel work hidden inside it. So we were honest with the structure to some extent, but there's a few little tricks that are hidden in there to hide how hard the structure is working, but achieve the architecture that you saw.
Well, there's got to always be a couple of tips and tricks in there, though, hasn't there, to make every project successful. Some amazing questions coming in, by the way. Thank you so much. We've got about 5 minutes or so left, so we'll answer as many of them as we can. Leo, we're going to stay with you for this one. This is from Michelle. Was the client keen to make the building carbon neutral and incorporate sustainability into the design?
Carbon neutrality wasn't a target for the client from day one, but they were keen on sustainability, particularly in terms of the efficiency and the running cost of the building, which is something that Ash touched on earlier. So any building technology that was proposed or introduced had to be demonstrated in sort of a whole life cycle cost and in terms of an ongoing running cost. So there's no gimmicks that were just added on there to make it appear to be more or less sustainable. They were all demonstrated as long-term costs to the client.
Yeah, just to add to that, we did a large optioneering process at the start of the scheme to look at all renewable options. And I think it's fair to say that every time we looked at any of these renewable options, we felt it was better value for money to put the money into the fabric and the structure of the building and enhance what we always call the passive house principles of the scheme, make the fabric work, make the structure work, and have to do less in terms of the artificial enhancement of those elements.
I must admit, it's really fascinating hearing everything that's gone into this project over the past few years. It's really interesting. Ash, we're going to stay with you for this one. This question is from Isabel Shipley. What is special about the mechanical and electrical services, and are there any progressive renewable technologies?
Well, similar to the question you just asked, really, I think the special thing about the M&E services is the passive elements that are designed inherently into the scheme. So it's got fantastic daylight, it's virtually passively cooled, a large office area with a lot of heat gains in there. And because of the structural slab solutions that we came up with as a team, then, we've largely passively cooled the area. And I think that's the most impressive thing, really. It's the passive house elements and the lack of primary energy demand that the building inherently has. As Leo was saying, we didn't put any renewables at all onto the building. We didn't have any gimmicks, and without really sort of having any targets set in terms of EPC, we've achieved a really low B rating, a few points above an A rating, just with these passive elements and this fantastic daylight. The daylight's the key thing. When you walk around those office buildings, it's exemplary. It really does stand out.
It's incredible. And so we've got time for just one more question, actually, before we finish. And this one is from Glyn Davies. So what systems were used to heat the large areas of space? And Leo, I think you'd like to answer this one.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Glyn. You saw some huge spaces in the warehouse, very deep planned spaces. And there was, on that side of the building, there was a high velocity system of ductwork that blows air from high up in the soffits down into the space, and that helps to create like a Venturi effect and turns the air over in the space really well. So even though it's a big warehouse which traditionally have fairly rudimentary ventilation systems, you do get that really nice environment in there, because it is still a workplace, and it was still as important to provide a nice environment on the warehouse side as equally as it was in the offices.
Absolutely.
Don't know if you want to add to that, Ash, about the heating and the big, huge bits of plant that we had hidden away on the roof. But
no, mate, I thought you were an M&E consultant then, the way you were describing.
Changing hats.
Brilliant. Well, that's all we've got time for questions-wise. Thank you so much to our amazing panel, and also for that video that we got to see. It was incredible to really see behind the scenes of everything that went into it, and then to also see the finished article as well. So thank you to Leo, Andy, Ash, Paul and Clive for sparing your time on this afternoon. I'm going to hand back over now to Will, who is going to bring today's webinar to a close.
Yeah, thank you very much as ever, Danielle. And that, of course, brings an end to today's webinar. As chair of ProCon Nottinghamshire, I'd like to hand out a few very big thank yous. First of all, to Leo for a splendid presentation, and also to Leo and his fellow panelists, Andy, Clive, Paul and Ashley. Another big thank you goes to the team at Cartwright Communications, including Danielle and Tom. And also a big thank you to Alison Jeffrey at Headstorm, who as ever is behind the organisation of our events, without whom I'm sure we wouldn't keep going. So thank you to all of those, and also thank you very much to all of you for watching, which I really do hope that you found it as interesting as I did. A really fascinating project, and we're very lucky to have an insight into it. Now, remember, you can get in touch with us if you're interested in becoming a member of ProCon by emailing us on info@procon-nottinghamshire.co.uk, info@proconleicestershire.co.uk for Leicestershire, or by giving us a call on 07803 126 807. I'm glad to say we'll be back in a couple of weeks with our next webinar, which is about the new planning regulations on the 23rd of September. So keep an eye out, as registrations will be opening soon. But for now, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.